I want to make sure we're muted on YouTube so we don't get any feedback, and we'll be good to go.
Okay.
All right. Welcome to our final pre-conference micro session. And today I have my special guest of Amy Morrissey. And I interviewed Hadiya Nuruddin yesterday, and I was like, I'm saving the best for last with Hadiya and Amy. So I'm grateful, Amy, that we were able to get together to do this. And I was thinking yesterday how it's kind of, serendipity is probably not the right word, but I started my whole training journey, like my journey into adult learning with you. And then here you are doing my last micro session for the GameCon 48V all these years later. Let me tell you, everyone, I was terrified of Amy Morrissey.
This cracks me up every time you say that.
I was so scared of Amy. And she just has high expectations, which is reason why her company that she leads is so successful also. So let me give you a little background. Amy Morrissey, we started way back when for a public seminar company, and she actually was certifying those of us who were coming through to become certified as trainers for this organization. So she was really instrumental in me getting into understanding adult learning principles, making connections, making sure that learning is happening, doing action plans and follow-ups and all these different components that make learning successful. So then her career took different directions. My career took different directions, but it's a small world, this L&D professional world. And so our paths keep crossing. And Amy her company has won one of the GameCon International Awards for best use of gamification in an e-learning program, a delightful program they did for Tiffany's. She's also spoken on our platform at GameCon, and I consider her a friend and a colleague, and we have a lot of similar approaches to leadership, some that are really good and some we lack.
Sometimes we're venting friends. Everybody needs a friend you can kind of vent with, and then you can get back to doing great work.
What the hell is going on? Yeah, all right. So Amy, welcome. I want to talk about the work that you're doing with Artisan e-learning. So Amy's the president, and just the scope of kind of projects that you do could be a little bit like mind-blowing, but I know that there's a process that you follow that makes it work for both you as a company who is providing this design agency services to companies, and then also to have those conversations with those decision makers inside of organizations. Gamification is just one of the many different solutions that you offer. So how do you get those conversations going?
Great question. So we're custom learning designers. That's sort of how we enter the conversation, which is a little bit different from maybe people who are at GameCon who are internal into an organization and how to advocate from within an organization. I think it's kind of fun to have the position of advocating from outside the organization. So when clients come to us, they might come to us in a variety of stages, and how we get that gamification conversation in there. As you said, some conversations, it just doesn't come up. It just doesn't feel like the right solution. But sometimes they're coming to us and the internal team has done a really good job, and it's sort of a half-baked, we're ready. We need a 1-hour course, engaging interactive e-learning. That's a very common thing that people come with on said topic. And they're already ready with, a good portion of that solution. And so that's a bit of a different conversation than if we are engaging at more of a strategic level. I always say it's kind of a funnel. We can start at the highest, most level of what is this thing and what are we trying to do, all the way down to, hey, I've got a course that's 3 years old and it needs some tweaks. Can you help me? So the conversation comes in at different places. So I don't know, did that answer the question?
Yeah, but so mostly when you're like, let's say that people are coming to you for a design and like they come to you already with the solution they think that they need, right? Like we need these 255 PowerPoint slides just converted to an e-learning program because this is going to help our people do X. So how do you like start navigating that conversation of,
Well, I wish more of them came with it will help our people navigate do X, because that would be like, woo, we're almost there. But
Yeah.
really what they tend to say is there's a lot of stuff that people need to know, you know, and that 250 point or slide PowerPoint is likely a data dump. There is likely stuff in there that nobody cares about. And they many times haven't gotten to that sense of action. Like we always say at Artisan, some Tuesday in November, when somebody needs this learning, what are they doing? Are they writing an email? Are they having a conversation? Are they out on the manufacturing floor? Are they about to sedate a child? Are they speaking in front? What are they doing that they need this learning? So that action-based thing, that's a big deal. Big deal to us. But I think some of what we want to get at is sort of the intersection of where L&D comes at a more strategic level within the organization. So somebody comes at that, we have 250 PowerPoints. Part of what we're going to try to do is suss out who they are within that organization, what influence they have within the organization, and, you know, budget and timelines and all of those things come into place. But if we can elevate the conversation from 250 slides converted into a PowerPoint to what is it that we're trying to accomplish, not only within the course, but within the business, within the strategy of the organization, I think then we have a much richer conversation about where learning in general, gamified or not, can get a seat at that table, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really good. And I know you led a session for us at GameCon, our live GameCon in Orlando last year. And I know that whole idea that you just said, you could see people's, you know, like when you see their eyebrows furrow, you know, they're like, what is this that she's talking about here? Is even getting a seat at that strategy table,
Right.
Because we're talking about business objectives. Really, in the L&D, we're going to take it that far. And I know it was like in an hour session, we had a long walk we had to make in that 1 hour. There was a long journey in an hour to get to what are the right questions, or why would the CEO care? And all the answers that we were giving were not relevant. It's not what the people who are actually going to make decisions on strategy in the organization. They don't care. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it as a business leader, so we just, in the last month, we've hired 3 people at Artisan. So for one job alone, we got 130 resumes. And we had 3 jobs that we were filling. And then however many interviews we had and we picked the person. Professional development is a part of the conversation in recruiting. I mean, and not that one that we necessarily put on the table. It's what the incoming employee expects, wants, desires, right?
Right.
So now we know we've got people coming into organizations who are asking for it. Great. That's fantastic. If we look at strategy and we look at L&D at the intersection of human resources, marketing, learning, okay? So human resources, people want professional development. They are asking about it. And that could be because of generational changes that are happening in the workforce. Could be that. I think that is a contributing factor. It could be because people are changing jobs significantly more often than, you know, maybe when you and I were coming up and we stayed at the same place for a really long time. So they understand that there's value in the learning that they get from an organization. There's all kinds of reasons that's happening. So that's, you know, on that kind of HR or that recruiting side. Employee engagement. I mean, you can't read Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, any of them. You can't read any of them without employee engagement being part of the conversation. You know, one of our corporate values at Artisan is that we are a company people want to be a part of. So whether that's an employee, a client, a contractor, we want people to want to be a part of this community that we're building. And I think I think there's a reckoning actually in corporate America about the culture that we're bringing. Right. So we've got that. That's strategic. Marketing, you know, marketing isn't just an external function. A good marketing department has an internal function to it. And then in so many of the conversations I'm having, L&D sits over in the corner and they're a bit of an order taker. And the business unit has told them 250 slides converted to an interactive and engaging learning. And they don't feel like they're a part of that conversation. But when I look at all of those other things, and let's just put let's layer gamification right there. Is there are there other ways? Sure. But shouldn't gamification be really high at the top of the list of an engaging strategy? You've had people talk about storytelling. Like I'm a huge proponent, totally believe it. And one of the things they always say is we've been listening to stories since the minute we were born. Right? All of us who tout it, we all say it. You have grandkids.
Yes.
How old were your grandkids when you started playing peekaboo with them?
Well, really young, because I was always about age appropriate toys. So from the very beginning, I had black and white images in there, where they could just, not trying to overstimulate, but just, because they're focusing and they're trying to focus their eyes and they're trying to get engaged and they want that. And so I have always just since my babes were little, just research what is age appropriate right now, what should they be working on, and let's get that to them. And I don't care about any kind of branded toy. I want to know what's the best thing for where their brain development and social interaction is right now. Yeah.
And somewhere in that first, I don't know, it could be 9 months, could be 18 months, somebody went peekaboo, peekaboo, and they lit up, right? Is that a game? Is that are we gamifying our parenting?
We're bringing playfulness into it.
At least playfulness. Yeah. At a minimum, playfulness.
Yeah.
And so it's the same concept, how do you engage? So then you grew, those babies are growing up and you've got your kids, and somewhere along the way, it's how do we, we got a bunch of kids running around the house. How do we engage them? We play games.
Right.
So all we are little people grown up. And that one of the most frustrating conversations I have is when we introduce this concept of gamifying and we hear things like, that we don't want, this is serious learning. We don't want that silliness.
They're doing really serious work. We really can't have them. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to pay for them to play because they've got a serious job to do.
Right.
Or better, we pay them to know this, so they'll learn it. Yeah. Hadia had the best response to that yesterday. She said, well, we're paying you to understand human behavior and performance, and you don't. So what is that?
Right. Love her. Yeah.
It's like, I'll let you know how that line works, Hadia, next time.
Right. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
But we know, regardless of age, another one that I hear a lot is, only the young people want that, the new, and I'm not going to change for this new generation. Well, I have two things to say about that. Number one, us versus a millennial or a Gen Z person coming in the workplace. Monica, we are at the age where we lose. Right. We will be out of the workforce when they are just getting started. And so
we're already the minority. They're already the majority population. Why are we still talking that tune? Why are we still
singing that tune? Yeah. And who are we to say the future isn't this? They're the future. We are not. So all of the old people sitting around conference room tables, bye-bye. Like we're getting there. So I think I have that to say. And then the other thing I have to say is everybody plays games. Everybody. Even when
you're not. 3 more minutes, right? Like just do this for 3 more minutes, Monica. Just 2 more. Do 2 more things. Right? That is a game that I'm making just to keep me going just a little bit further, just a little bit more focused. It may not be, published and make money, but it's a game. It's a game. Yeah.
One of my favorite games I play, and I actually just read an article about this. I am one of those people that finds getting on an airplane an adventure, and I push it. Like, what time do I have to leave? What time do I really have to leave my house? What does 1 hour prior to 1 hour prior
airplane
to
roulette here.
Yeah. My husband and I have very different beliefs about what 1 hour prior to takeoff means. He thinks it means you are absolutely through security 1 hour before boarding begins. I think it means
Reasonable.
your foot is crossing the threshold of the front door 1 hour before this.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I didn't realize I do this because I would have said, oh, I'm just a procrastinator, oh, this, oh, that. And I read this awesome article where, I mean, there are people who are way riskier than I am about it, but why do they do it? They do it because they're in the middle of a boring workday with boring stuff. They're mind numbing and they're like, this is fun. This gets my heart going. There's a sense of adventure. I can accomplish something. I did something. All those other people got on the airplane, but here's how I got on the airplane. And it was all this psychological stuff about why those of us who think that's fun. I personally go, the people who get there an hour ahead and sit and do nothing. I got like 10 other things done at home, off the list, while you all were sitting here playing Candy Crush on your phone.
Nothing, or just sitting there, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? It's like Amy for the win, right? Like you.
But they think I'm nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, just so you know, they all think I'm nuts. But yes, Amy for the win. But my point is, there are human beings on the end of our learning, right?
Yeah.
And human beings are motivated in a variety of ways. And so are there people who are motivated by getting the certificate and I have that knowledge and I can say I am a fill in the blank? Yeah, for sure there are. But I think there are more people who are saying, when I'm learning something, if you can engage me, if you can help me see the fun in it, if you can show a bit of that company culture that you're wanting to infuse of maybe a company people want to be a part of, maybe the best place to work, maybe, we have a good time together, whatever those kind of internal branding, marketing personalities that companies are having. And then you hand me 1 hour compliance ethics course that is so dull, I can't even see straight. Well, where's the consistency with that? And I think some of it is because L&D needs to get a better or a seat, sometimes even a seat at that strategy table. But even when I'm talking at the CLO level, and I will not say these things are not important, but what they want to talk about is sometimes their KPIs, not the learners, right? Not the business goal, but what they're trying to accomplish. And then, strategy is about, when they first talk strategy, mostly what I hear are things like how many people they have to train, in what countries they have to train them, what are the maybe government regulations around the training and whatnot, which is certainly a part of the strategic conversation. But what I want to get to is the strategic conversation about that human taking that course who wants to be engaged, and not because we're here to just solely entertain, but because we want retention. We want them to do something differently that Tuesday in November. Let's say if it's an ethics course where I have an ethical dilemma coming at me, and I remember that moment. That's the other thing I think gamification helps us with, is memory triggers. I won't remember the 176th slide of bullet point. I won't remember it. It's impossible for me to remember that. But might I remember that one part of the escape room where I had to make a really critical ethical decision about where we were going to go with thus and so. And even though taking the path into the room on the left might have been faster and more efficient, the room on the right protected us as an organization long-term, prevented us from litigation, all of the things that might happen in an ethics course. And in that room, I had to make, in that, whatever it's a virtual room, a real room, whatever, I had to make that ethical decision. Might I remember that some Tuesday in November when I have to do the thing in real life?
Yeah. And at the very least, what we will remember is there was a really tough decision we had to make. And I need to make sure that I'm making that right decision now. So I'm going to go ask somebody. So for example, Sharon Goza, who's presenting at GameCon. She designed an ethics course with USDA and NASA combined, and they saw a significant increase in calls to the ethics compliance office, which could look like, well, we didn't succeed because our calls have actually increased, but actually it shows a huge success because people realize, wait a minute, I think there's something that I need to find out whether this is the way we're supposed to be acting or not. So actually the increase in calls shows a positive outcome, not a negative from the course, right? So people need to be—
I love that. I love sharing,
right? Yeah, like
she's speaking at this one, yeah?
Yeah, she's speaking. She's going to demonstrate one of her new things. She took a NASA project to the moon and she repurposed it to 5 Years to Mars as a game. So it's a really neat design implication, right? Like looking at what was original and then how she took it and turned it into a game. So we're just going to explore the fun of that. So yeah, she's just top notch. Yeah. But that's exactly what, we need people to understand that we're not, it's not about the game. It's about making decisions and understanding, okay, if we don't know, it's okay that we don't know, but we realize that I need some help here. And yeah, that's really good, Amy.
The other thing I love that happens in so many games, I mean, let's go back to Monopoly, where you remember when you picked up the card and it was like the chance card and something bad happened and you were like, oh, I just feel so unlucky and so horrible. And this isn't strategy. You only won because I picked bad cards. Well, do we not hear those same conversations echoed in the halls of, or virtual halls of corporate America? I mean, so it also gives us the chance to infuse, infuse the unexpected, to show consequences, or to explore. That is one of the, going back to those initial questions, that first question you asked me about what kind of conversations do we want to have. One question we always like to ask is about exploration, and is, what are the goals of this? Because 250 slides to an interactive and engaging course, most of the time the goal is to get them to the end of the course with being able to, 80% or I clicked every slide or whatever it is. But what about those opportunities where exploration and in exploring a negative consequence is a good thing? Yeah. Not only is it okay, it's a good thing. So let's go ahead and take the room to the left. Let's be more efficient. Let's be more effective. But then let's look 10 years down the road at the public relations nightmare that happened as a result of the litigation and what happened to the organization. One of my favorite, I probably have talked about this at GameCon, one of my favorite teachers ever, Mr. Nevitt, 7th grade history, Roosevelt Middle School, Decatur, Illinois. Our assignment was to take a moment in history and say it didn't happen and play out the next 5 years. So I chose Kennedy's assassination. So what did I have to learn in order to do that assignment? I had to learn what actually happened. I had to learn what was happening ahead of time. I had to learn what Johnson did to, shift things. What, would it have worked? Would have, going into Bay of Pigs and all of that kind of stuff. But I mean, at that young age, trying to figure all of that out is just exploration of consequence. So my presentation, it didn't really matter what I believed might have happened. That wasn't the point. The point was the exploration that I had to do in order to come up with my, hypothetical response.
Which is so good because, that's unfortunately, that was before we, No Child Left Behind, which was a good idea. Like the concept it has merit. It just has played out really poorly, right? But because you were learning critical thinking skills that we simply cannot do today because we don't have time to let you go down that road of something that didn't happen, Amy.
Oh yeah.
We have time to teach you stuff that did happen. We can't explore what didn't happen because what sense is there in that, right? It's critical thinking. It's really, looking at options, looking at consequences, understanding consequences. That's so great. What a great, and don't you love it that of everything you learned in those 12 years of K through 12 or 13, 14 years, however many it was, you remember that.
Yeah.
Still clear. Like you
Crystal.
can still see
Yeah.
it in your mind's eye,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a sixth grade teacher who was teaching us biology. We came in one day and he had all the desks pushed to the side and he had on the floor mapped out with tape a heart, a working heart. And we were the blood vessels walking through the heart for the next week. I can still see that when I walked in the room, what that room looked like. And we're all like, Mr. Wright, what did you do? You know, what is it? And that was sixth grade. Of all the stuff I learned, those things are stuck.
Here, there. My daughter's, one of her Girl Scout activities was they had to physically with their bodies create female anatomy. This thing we don't talk about, right? We're not supposed to talk
I don't know, Amy. Sounds like they crossed a line there. I don't know. Yeah, right?
Yeah, but it's their bodies and they got to learn about it in a safe way. They were laughing. They were this, and it gave parents a vocabulary to have conversation. And I mean, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But it's this get in there. The other funny thing about this idea of like the strategy and the, think about employee engagement and think about and how sometimes we're, all working parallel paths instead of, how can learning help us do this or whatever. The very same people that will say something like, it's not really our culture to fill in the blank, to use illustrated characters, to do gamification, to, they will take their executive team on a retreat and do a ropes course in a heartbeat.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's for those people. We need those people to be innovative. We need these people to comply. We need these people to just do. And, Amy, you have me wondering, like, I know Jonathan's been doing a lot of research, like the learning that we used for, if your grandfather used is not going to work for millennials and Gen Z, like, right? It's a different type of. But when you think about why L&D doesn't get a seat at the table, it feels like, again, it's part of that learned behavior. Like no one asked us, what do you want to learn and how will you use it ever, right? Like even in college, we were still given a degree plan. Like if you want to get a degree in psychology, you will follow this. Now there's like Brown University, they do it a little bit more customized, right? But we were just given that degree plan. This is what you will learn if you want to become this. No one ever talked with us about why we need to learn it or how we're going to use it. It was just, I'm thinking that when we talk about having a seat at the strategy table, those decision makers are still thinking, well, just give them a degree plan. Just tell them this is what they need to know so they can do. But it's a faulty thinking from the beginning, and it didn't work because how many of us graduated with a degree that we don't use?
Yeah.
I can't do jack. I can't.
Right. My job didn't exist. My industry didn't exist when I was in college. So how could I have learned to do it?
How could you have learned? Right. Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's just say, last question.
Yeah.
So, Chief Learning Officer, mega international company calls you and says, we're doing a whole new corporate restructure. We want to change culture here, the belief system. We want people making radical decisions and saying no when no needs to be said. And we want this across. We got 97 countries, 18 different languages. I don't know. I'm making it really hard. And we want you to gamify this. So I want to have that, like, where would you even start with that? What would you say?
That's
most important. Like, and I heard gamification's the answer. Let's say they say it.
And
like
I heard
that.
I think
we should gamify it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big question. And I think the way to answer it is what path would I start trying to like get that person to? And I think one of the things that I would probably look at early, first of all, I would affirm a lot of that, we're looking at changing culture. We're looking at, gamifying at least gets me to a place where we have decision making, we have action, we're getting those kinds of things.
Choices, consequence.
Consequences, all of those kinds of things in. So I think I would, definitely affirm a lot of that, of those choices. And then I would really get into asking for the L&D side of it, I would want in really short order to figure out who our learner personas are, or who our avatars are, whatever language that they use and makes them feel comfortable, so that we can understand, who it is we're designing for and what choices they are making. And when you just said 97 countries, I love that you've gone international and naming it and talking about it, because I think one of the things that as a uniquely North American person, I would want to make sure I'm exploring what that looks like across the globe, not just where I sit here in Michigan.
Right.
So I think personas from the L&D side, personas and actions, what is it that we're trying to get them to accomplish? And then I'm going to stack it up, and why are we doing that within a business unit? I believe that only the learner can achieve the business objectives. I can't achieve the business objectives as an instructional designer. So I got to build it so that they know how to do that. And how do those business objectives line up to the strategy? And what is the strategy? And is the strategy horizontal like this, or is it, marketing works with L&D, and L&D works with HR, and we're building this ecosystem that creates an environment where this is right. Because if all you did in a transition of that magnitude was say, and we're going to gamify learning, it's not going to work. Right? Because it'll be, well, that's just one more thing they're trying, and give it 3 weeks and it'll change.
I'm just going to sit here and do nothing because they're going to change their mind in 3 weeks. I mean, again, learned behavior. How many times in organizations do employees just sit there and not do nothing, but they don't initiate the change we're seeking because they know we're going to change our mind 3 weeks, a month from now, 2 months from now, we're going to go a whole nother direction. So I'll just sit here passively doing what I've done and wait for the next change. Yeah.
So I don't know. That was a big question. So there was a lot I would want.
That was really not fair. A lot not fair, but it was just, those kind of looking for that cookie cutter solution, I think it's just this misunderstanding of how and why the L&D function exists in the first place.
Right.
And we know, because we've experienced it, that for a lot of managers, chief officers, a checkbox would be why it exists for them. I want to be able to check that they took this, that you fixed them, you made them better. You gave them this little magic pill that suddenly they'll make all the right decisions, and that's not human behavior, and it's not how humans work. And we're having that huge disconnect with, when you were talking about KPIs, what I want as a chief learning officer and what the organization wants. And then I'm totally forgetting about, well, what about these people over here that you need them to help you get there? It's got to be valuable for them, or you'll be fighting against the tide. And employees want meaningful work. They
ask for it on the way in the door. What will you do for me?
Yeah, they want to have impact. They want to be successful. They want their families to know they're successful. They want to, and
even work that matters.
Even if it's just that they work because they have an avocation outside of work, that helps to fund that. They still want to do well here so they can do well over here. And
the ones who don't need to be weeded out.
Why are they there?
We don't need to worry about designing for them. We actually don't want them.
Right.
I mean, there's my bold Amy.
There's one of those Amy and we would talk about this. Like, I know, like Susie and Sammy Slacker over there. What are they doing? Well, we can't let people go. Why? Do you have, that's a whole nother conversation. Right. Well,
I think one of the things that Diane Elkins, who's the founder of, or one of the founders of Artisan, she asks, are we measuring the effect of learning so that the LMS administrator sleeps well at night?
Ooh.
Because the LMS administrator wants to make sure they've clicked every button or put, whatever, because that's their KPIs. It's not bad that they have those KPIs, but those are their KPIs. And instead, can we get learning to the place where we're, either trusting, I would love that, but we can measure the effects, going back to Sharon. Did anybody think a KPI might be what we want to do is increase calls to the ethics line? Because
Right.
if we increase calls to the ethics line, we now have a perfect cultural match to the answers that we want to give, and we can infuse that. So and maybe it's the first 6 to 18 months, we want to increase questions. After 18 months, we'd like to see a decline in questions with the same level of positive decision making. Is
Right.
that the KPI we should go
Yeah.
after?
I love it because, and like you said, the LMS is, that's not a wrong KPI, but they're also not who we're designing for. And we fall into that trap. Like, let's design for that individual, but that's not who we're designing for. That's not who this course is for.
Right.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. I knew I would enjoy it. Wonderful
know.
Sunday morning. We should have beignets and coffee and it would have been perfect. So
Yes. Yes.
we can do that in Orlando, and we can do that in New Orleans in September. So
New Orleans in September.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Amy, I know you have gazillion things on your plate, but we start tonight at 7 Eastern and we'll go for the next 48 hours. So if you have some time over the next 48 hours to pop in, I know that people want to talk to you and ask you questions. Yeah, well, how do you do that, Amy? I heard what you said, but like, how would I do this? Right. And you'll get a lot of those types of questions, I imagine. So thank you so much. Really enjoy having you. Appreciate you.
Yes,
Even
thank you. Appreciate
so
you too. So happy about this GameaCon. You guys are doing awesome, awesome things.
Thank you so much, Amy. We'll see you.